Okay, so today we're diving into this pretty impressive book,
Yeah.
The Men's Fashion Book, an encyclopedic journey through 200 years of menswear.
It's quite the volume.
It is, it's hefty. It's from Phaidon, meticulously edited, and there's a great intro by Jacob Gallagher from the Wall Street Journal.
He always has insightful takes.
Yeah, he does. He does. And you know what I thought when I first cracked this open? It's not just like a typical reference book. It really tells the whole story of how men's style has changed, over the last 2 centuries.
Exactly. It's more like a panorama,
Panorama, yeah. And the design is amazing. There are 2 ribbon markers in here.
which you definitely need.
You need them because it's A to Z, everything menswear. But it doesn't feel dry at all.
Right.
It's so engaging. It really connects what guys wear to like the big cultural things that were happening.
That's what makes it so interesting. And a big part of that is how they chose to structure it alphabetically.
Right, alphabetically. So you get these like unexpected pairings, things you wouldn't normally think of together when you think about men's fashion.
That's the point, I think, to make you consider those connections.
Totally. Like, where else would you find Alpha Industries, the bomber jacket people, next to Omega, the James Bond watch?
That's true, you wouldn't.
And then you've got Tom Brown, super modern designer, right there with James Brown, like the godfather of soul.
That's a good one.
And then Tim Blanks, the fashion critic, with Judy Blame, who's all about creative rebellion. And then Rei Kawakubo, who's like the queen of intellectual fashion, with Wisdom K, who's super contemporary.
Wow, it's like they deliberately wanted to make those contrasts jump out.
Exactly. And I think it works. It shows you how many sides there are to men's style. It's not just one thing.
It really isn't. And if you look at the scope of this book, it's mind-boggling. Around 130 designers who basically shaped how men look, about 100 brands with staying power, and then like 70 style icons. From Cary Grant, who's all about elegance, to James Brown, who had an amazing stage energy. Then there are the photographers, about 40 of them.
The visual storytellers.
Exactly. And then you have like the tailors, shoemakers, accessory guys, and the publications, the magazines, and everything that spread these ideas.
It's like this whole world.
The whole world, yeah.
And in the intro, Jacob Gallagher, he says something that really hit me. He talks about how the book tries to answer those insider questions.
The stuff even fashion people argue about.
Yeah, like who really came up with those iconic pieces we all know? And who are the names that serious fashion people talk about? It's not just about the big brands. It's about the people you don't always hear about. And those subcultures that end up being so influential.
Unsung heroes, right?
Yeah, totally. And sometimes those influences are subtle. You don't even realize it.
I think the book does a good job of pointing those out.
So by the time we're done with this deep dive, we want you to walk away with this richer understanding of how men's fashion works. It's constantly evolving,
It never sits still.
We'll point out some of those connections, the surprising stuff, so you can see men's fashion in a whole new light. Because in the end, it's so much more than just clothes. It's about our culture.
Right. It reflects who we are.
Exactly. And as we go through this, I think you'll see how men's fashion is tied to these shifts in culture, the media, and all the big social changes happening.
Yeah, the men's fashion book, it really shows you how connected those things are.
One thing that really stuck with me was, how the book shows how masculine identity has changed just based on what men wear.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Think about how formal things were, almost like there was a code, And now there's so much freedom.
There's so many ways to express yourself.
Right, so much self-expression. It makes you realize, like, early on, men's fashion was all about social hierarchy, and military stuff was a big influence.
Yeah, like uniforms, that idea of uniformity.
Yeah, for a long time, there were these strict rules about what was masculine to wear. Anything outside those rules was, like, not okay.
It was frowned upon.
Yeah, and there's this quote in the book from Grace Coddington. She was a big editor. She talks about how in fashion shoots, for a long time, the men were almost props.
Like they were just there.
Yeah, all the focus was on the women in the couture gowns. But then things started to change. The book talks about the 60s, the peacock revolution.
Oh, yeah, that was a big shift.
Right. Guys started wearing bright colors, being more flamboyant.
It was a rebellion against the old rules.
And then things got more conservative again. But then in recent decades, it's like everything opened up. Men are wearing so many different styles, challenging what it means to be masculine.
It's so much more fluid now.
Yeah, the book talks about the unisex looks of the late 60s, early 70s, and then glam rock, which was very androgynous, and then the 80s power dressing, all those big shoulder pads.
Oh, yeah.
And now, in the 21st century, it's even more fluid. Designers like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Alexander McQueen, they really challenged gender norms with their clothes.
They weren't afraid to break the rules.
Yeah. And then you have the pop stars like Prince, Boy George, who really pushed those boundaries for everyone to see.
They made it mainstream.
Yeah, now it's not a big deal to see a guy in lace on the red carpet or wearing pink. The men's fashion book, it puts all these designers and stars next to the big social changes that were happening, like LGBTQ plus rights becoming more visible, the power of music, how it all changed the idea of masculinity. It's really fascinating.
So how did something that was once so niche become so widely accepted?
That's a great question.
And the book has an answer. Media, the power of images. It's everywhere in the book.
It's a theme throughout the whole book. It talks about how men's fashion magazines started appearing in the early 1900s, like Apparel Arts, which later became GQ,
Yeah.
and of course Hollywood. You can practically see the entry for Cary Grant explaining how his tailored suits, his trench coat, how that made those things popular all over the world.
That classic Hollywood style.
Yeah. And then TV came along, music videos, that was a big shift.
MTV changed everything.
Oh, yeah. Gallagher talks about how hip-hop and rap in the 80s and 90s, how those music videos on MTV changed who influenced fashion. It was all about the musicians and young people.
They set the trends.
Right, and the book goes deep into that, like Run DMC wearing Adidas, Tupac with his bandanas and baggy clothes. Those styles came from the street, but then high fashion picked them up.
It all trickled up.
Yeah, brands like Nike, Adidas, they went from athletic wear to everyday style. And the book gives credit to the photographers, the editors, the people who shaped that story through images.
It's a collaborative thing.
Totally. And now, of course, it's all about the internet, social media.
Everything's online.
Right. The book talks about influencers, e-commerce, how Instagram and sites like Mr. Porter have totally changed how guys discover clothes, how they buy them, even what they think is stylish.
It's a whole new landscape.
So the book takes you through all these eras of men's style alongside the media that was shaping it. From illustrations in old magazines to Hollywood, glossy fashion spreads, music videos, and now online.
It's all part of the same story.
Exactly. And it's not just media. The book also talks about how music, sports, all those cultural things have always impacted fashion.
Things that aren't directly related to fashion end up influencing it.
Yeah, it includes musicians, actors, athletes, even fictional characters, anyone who sparked a trend. Like rock and roll in the 50s and 60s, Elvis, the Beatles, they brought this sense of rebellion to men's clothes. Longer hair, leather jackets, bold patterns.
It was a youth quick.
It was. And the book mentions the Peacock Revolution in the late 60s. Men's clothes became much more colorful, more decorated.
That was groundbreaking.
It was. If there's an entry on Michael Jackson, it probably talks about his sequined glove, those military jackets that everyone copied in the 80s.
He was a style icon.
Oh, for sure. And there's definitely a section on hip-hop, how it started with tracksuits and gold chains and then ended up collaborating with high fashion. And the book talks about performance, how it influences style. Like the biker jacket, the barber jacket, those are classics worn by everyone, from actual bikers to James Bond.
It's true. Those are very versatile pieces.
And the book doesn't forget about sports stars. Bobby Jones, the golfer, he inspired all that elegant sportswear in the 20s. And Michael Jordan, his impact on sneakers was huge.
Oh, yeah. Sneakers are their own world.
They are. What I love is how the book makes these connections between men's style and what's happening in society. When a certain kind of hero is popular or a new subculture starts, it shows up in what men wear.
It reflects the zeitgeist.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important things the book talks about is the shift in who decides what's fashionable. It used to be all about the elite, places like Savile Row, the Paris fashion houses. But that's changed.
Fashion has become more democratic.
Exactly. The book talks about how street style, grassroots movements, they're so influential now.
Yeah.
Like zoot suits in the 40s, that came from African American and Latino youth.
Very distinctive look.
Yeah, and the surfwear in the 60s from California, and skaters in the 90s influencing streetwear. These all started outside the traditional fashion system.
It's bottom up, not top down.
Yeah, and the book includes people like Jamel Shabazz, the street photographer who captured 80s New York style, and early hip-hop magazines like Fresh. It all points to how democratic style has become. New ideas can come from anywhere now.
And they spread so quickly online.
It's amazing. The book spends a lot of time on hip-hop, how in the 80s, young Black and Latino guys were the style innovators. And now you see luxury brands collaborating with them or even being led by them.
It's come full circle.
It has, and that shows how social changes, things like the civil rights movement, globalization, how they impacted fashion in a big way.
You can't separate fashion from history.
Exactly. War gave us the bomber jacket, the trench coat. Economic changes made suits more affordable. How we think about masculinity, sexuality, that affects what's considered fashionable. The book makes it clear. Men's fashion and social history are totally intertwined.
And the book doesn't just tell you about these things, it shows you. It has over 1,000 pictures, carefully chosen.
It's so visually rich. Every image seems to be there for a reason, to sum up the person, the brand, the whole movement. It's like walking through a museum exhibit about men's style.
And the images are so clear you can see every detail.
Yeah, the quality is amazing. You see the cut of a suit, the texture of the fabric. And because of the alphabetical order, the way the images are placed next to each other, it really makes you think.
Those unexpected pairings, visually.
I remember this one spread, Granny Takes a Trip, this psychedelic boutique from London, right next to a picture of Cary Grant, all elegant.
That's a great example.
It's like the whole range of men's style from different times all in one place.
And there are these little details like old advertisements mixed in with the portraits. It gives you context, helps you understand the attitudes of the time.
Like how after the war, it was all about conformity, the corporate look, and then things became more casual.
You see those shifts through the images.
Yeah. And it's not just clothes, it's the people behind them, the moments. Designers working, fashion shoots, candid shots, like that self-portrait of Peter Berlin in the 70s, or a campaign image from A. Coldwell, which is much more recent. Each picture tells a story that goes beyond just what they're wearing.
It captures the spirit of the time.
And the book itself is beautiful. The cover, the ribbon markers, the paper, the layout, it all makes it so enjoyable to look through.
It's an experience, not just a book.
Yeah. Even if you just flip through the pictures, you'd learn a lot. You can see how things evolve from those stiff, formal portraits in the 1800s to now, where it's so much more relaxed and diverse.
So overall, the men's fashion book, it's a landmark publication. For a long time, men's fashion was kind of in the background, not as important as women's fashion. This book changes that.
It gives men's fashion the attention it deserves.
Yeah, it shows all the legends, the innovators, how much it's connected to culture. Stephen Kolb from the CFDA, he says it perfectly. It's this amazing celebration of men's style through time across the globe. It shows the talent, the creativity.
He's right. It proves that men's fashion has had just as many eccentrics, geniuses, and provocateurs as women's fashion.
That's what makes it so exciting.
And the range of people in here, from Savile Row tailors to hip-hop artists to TikTok stars, it just shows you how many sides there are to men's fashion. It's not just about the clothes, it's about the art, the expression.
It's a statement.
Yeah. Anyone who's curious about how men's clothes have changed, who the big names are, this is the book for now. It explains why certain pieces became iconic, who came up with the big ideas, and it gives credit to those people who are often forgotten.
It sets the record straight.
And even if you just want to browse, it's full of interesting stories, surprising facts. It's really engaging.
It's a great read.
So the men's fashion book, it connects men's style to all these big cultural moments in a way that I haven't seen anywhere else. It shows you that behind every outfit, there's a story. Maybe it's about social change, artistic innovation, or just expressing yourself. It's not just about trends. It's about how men have presented themselves throughout history.
It goes deep.
It does. And right now, men's fashion is so exciting, so creative. All the old rules are being broken, and a new generation is figuring out their own style. This book is perfect for this moment.
It's very timely.
Yeah, it's a record of the past, but it also celebrates the people shaping the future of men's clothes and how we express ourselves.
So now that we've gone through this book, we want you to think about your own choices. What you wear, how does it connect to everything we talked about? Does it reflect those historical and cultural forces? Or does it go against them? And what's next for men's fashion? What will the next chapter be? We hope this deep dive inspires you to learn more, explore more. There's so much out there.
It's a fascinating journey, and we're just scratching the surface here.
Absolutely. There's always more to discover.